Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Tianlu with you on this Friday, July the 10th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, Chinese President Xi Jinping holds talks with his Namibian counterpart in Beijing. Rescue operations continue in flood-hit Guangxi in South China, while the country's southeast coast braces for another strong typhoon. And Asia-Pacific business leaders gather in Thailand to prepare for this year's APEC leaders meeting. In business, China rolls out a carbon peak action plan for the next 5 years. In sports, Kylian Mbappe scores again to send France into the semi-final of the World Cup. In culture and entertainment, an exhibition in Brazil explores Chinese history through the universal language of food. Now checking today's top stories. Chinese President Xi Jinping has held talks with his Namibian counterpart. President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is currently on a state visit to China. Earlier, she laid a wreath at the monument to the People's Heroes on Tiananmen Square. Before coming to Beijing, she visited Guangdong and Sichuan provinces. Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has said China can play a major role in her country's industrialization by combining Namibia's natural resources with Chinese technology and finance. In an interview with CGTN, she laid out a vision for win-win cooperation from mineral processing to tourism.
China can play a big role. Namibia, we have that country. It's endowed with natural resources, good sceneries, good biodiversity, both fauna and flora. Now, the Chinese enterprises could be attracted by the resources that we are having, and we know they have the technology. So if we put together the resources that we are having, which will be in the hands of the Namibian enterprise, and then the Chinese enterprise brings the technology, possible also finance, all together with the Namibian entrepreneur, they can use those resources and the skill available to go into the international market to get finances. That is the way China can play in our industrialization. And once they come together, if it is minerals, they extract. After extracting, they process. And when they process, those products will be Namibian product. And they can be exported even to China.
The president also highlighted tourism as a key bridge for people-to-people exchanges and a driver of jobs and infrastructure that directly feeds into industrialization.
If it is tourism, then this one will then now talk to your last question, which is people-to-people contact. Because tourism is one sector that has a big component of people-to-people contact. So, and through that also, industrialization will come, because tourism is a job creator. And tourism is also, it contributes to infrastructure development. And it can also put quite a lot of resources into the country when the tourists are coming and visit your country. So this is really how that we can support one another in the process of industrialization in our country.
The president's remarks come as Namibia seeks to move beyond raw exports and build local processing capacity, with Chinese investment and tourism playing growing roles in the country's long-term development agenda. Namibian National Planning Commission Director General Dr. Kara Mbuende is in Beijing as part of the presidential delegation to China. The trip aims to deepen economic cooperation across mining, agriculture, green energy, and nuclear power. Dr. Mbuende says China's transformation offers inspiration and a clear win-win opportunity.
You know, I have followed development in China from the 70s, the 80s, And 40 years ago, I was here, it was a different country. Look at what it is now. So that's a sense, that's a source of inspiration on the one hand, but also I believe there will be, or there are opportunity for a win-win opportunity. China being a large economy, and Namibia being resourceful.
He stresses moving beyond raw exports to local processing and jobs. On green energy, he highlights Namibia's rare advantage, the strongest sun and wind in the same places, giving it a AAA comparative edge for green hydrogen.
Well, the green energy in Namibia has quite unique potential. I was visiting a site of one of the sites where they are planning to invest in the green production of green hydrogen using green energy, and primarily solar and wind. And unlike other places where you have sun on the one side and wind on the other, the strongest wind and the strongest sun are located in the same space. And that gives really a competitive edge. So we have, there are some companies that have gone like producing green iron, using solar, green hydrogen and so forth. So on the one hand, the whole issue of green energy was a decarbonization program, climate change and so forth. But also increasingly it is becoming an energy security issue. And therefore the demands has now increased. And we'd like to take advantage of this window of opportunity because every crisis creates opportunity.
Dr. Mbuende noted that Chinese equipment and technology are already in Namibia's energy sector and that cooperation now includes training programs for nuclear experts. Namibia is seeking billions in investment to transform its economy by 2030. Beijing has hosted a China-Namibia Trade and Investment Conference. Visiting Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah attended the meeting and delivered a keynote speech. Yu Yang reports.
Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is accompanied by cabinet ministers and business leaders. She met with a number of representatives of the Chinese business community, such as Sinomime and the China-Africa Development Fund, when she came to address a China-Namibia Trade and Investment Conference.
This forum, Director of Ceremony, is not simply another business event. It represents an important opportunity to translate the long-standing friendship and political trust between Namibia and China into tangible economic outcomes that create jobs, stimulate investment, transfer skills, and improve the lives of our people.
Namibian ministers said the purpose of the event is to enhance partnerships and deepen cooperation in the fields such as energy, investment, and agriculture.
The most important thing is that we meet potential business people and business people already. Most of them are those in the mining sector, energy sector, but others are also in the agricultural sector. So our interest is to engage so that we form partnerships.
China and Namibia enjoy strong economic ties, and bilateral trade hit over $1.85 billion last year, up more than one-third year-on-year. And experts say the visit will also advance cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative and the outcomes of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation.
We are bilateral partners, but also within the context of the Forum of China-Africa Cooperation. What we are discussing is really the decision that were taken at that forum. So the visit is significant both in bilateral terms, but also in terms of China-Africa cooperation and the world.
The two sides are expected to engage in discussions of bilateral relations as well as the development of the Global South.
That was Yu Yang reporting. For more on China-Namibia ties, Zhong Shi spoke to Chair Professor Rong Ying at Sichuan University.
China proposes to further align its development strategies with Namibia, expand bilateral trade and deepen cooperation in various fields. What unique advantage do you think China and Namibia each have, and how can they deliver mutual benefits and win-win results?
Well, China and Namibia has been a very strong and a traditional friendship and a deep-rooted political trust. And if you look at the development level, I think there are huge complementarities given the different size, different level of development, and so on and so forth. So with that political commitment, with that political trust, I think the agreement, the two sides, to have better strategic development synergies focusing on these priority areas will very much, in a way, to leverage their comparative advantage for mutually beneficial win-win cooperation. But the most important thing, as far as I can see, is, of course, during the visit, a mechanism has to be established and the concrete steps should be taken so that these political commitment, these alignment, strategic alignment, were translated into concrete actions.
Professor, if you look at this state visit, it's proving to be a rather lengthy one. Before Beijing, the Namibian president visited Guangdong and Sichuan provinces, where she learned about China's agricultural modernization and attended a business roundtable. What do you think of that part of the visit? How do these exchanges boost interactions between the two countries?
I think this is very much unique and interesting sort of development. Represents, I think, both sides. Particularly, I believe that the Namibia side is pragmatic, practical sort of way of conducting its engagement or cooperation with China. We know that Guangdong and Sichuan, they are very much, I think, sort of developed in terms of industrialization and also the modern agricultural productions. And that's exactly the reason why the president was very much impressed by these two regions. And also during the meetings with the local leaders, I think they all expressed their readiness and interest in leverage their respective comparative strengths to help promote and implement the strategic guidance by the central leadership for the common goods of the relationship.
That was Chair Professor Rong Ying talking about China-Namibia relations. Coming up, rescue operations continue in flood-hit Guangxi in South China, while the country's southeast coast braces for another strong typhoon.
Beijing has unveiled a sweeping new package of measures to strengthen Hong Kong's role as the world's leading offshore renminbi hub and an international financial center. But why now? From expanding Bond Connect and offshore RMB liquidity to developing gold trading and new risk management tools, are these measures simply deepening Hong Kong's financial markets or redefining its role in the global financial system? In this week's Chat Lounge, we unpack what's new, why it matters, and whether Hong Kong is on track to become a global pricing center for RMB-denominated assets. Get all these wherever you listen to podcasts and on CGTN Radio.
Now it's 13 minutes past the hour. Search efforts have largely concluded following a fire that killed 28 people at a shoe factory in the city of Jinjiang, Fujian province. Provincial authorities have established an investigation team. The head and other managers who ran the factory are in custody. Biran has details.
According to the authorities, the shoe factory fire has killed 28 people, and this blaze broke out at around 12 p.m. on Thursday. The factory is located at a shoe manufacturing hub under Chenzhou. The firefighters dispatched around 200 rescuers and 35 vehicles to the scene, but they confirmed that the cause of the accident remains under investigation. The rescuers said the factory stairwells were cluttered by materials to make shoes, which slowed down the rescue effort and obstructed the relief work during the rescue, and the factory still held a large amount of those materials to make shoes when the fire blazed out. And according to the local authorities, the legal representatives of the company and those who are responsible were taken under control, while the financial accounts of the company were frozen. China's Ministry of Emergency Management have also sent a team to the scene to handle the rescue work, while Fujian and Chenzhou have sent over 500 people from their public security, public health, firefighting and police department to the scene to treat the injured and handle the scene.
That was Biran reporting. Northern China, including Beijing, is experiencing heavy downpours, prompting weather warnings and safety bulletins from authorities. Wang Munjie has the latest.
Beijing issued its first orange rainstorm alert of this year's flood season on Thursday. The latest is that at least 5 districts of the city upgraded to red, the highest level, with authorities forecasting torrential rain through Friday and Saturday. The rainfall varies from district to district. Taking the Chaoyang district, where I'm standing right now, as an example, the district witnessed a moderate rain this morning, to some extent affected people's transportation to work, and then rain has stopped temporarily. The rain is expected to continuously hit the city starting late afternoon. So based on the situation, local authorities call on citizens to reduce their outdoor activities and stay home as much as possible. And multiple suburban railway trains were suspended on Friday, and the subways in raining areas were operated in reduced speed. And in terms of highway, all construction projects have been suspended so far. And forecasters warn that the mountainous and semi-mountainous regions will face a high risk of secondary disasters, for example, like the landslide and mudslide.
That was Wang Munjie reporting. Authorities in Zhejiang province have stepped up emergency preparations as Typhoon Bavi approaches the country's southeast coast. The National Flood and Typhoon Emergency Response has been raised to level 3, with forecasters warning Bavi could make landfall as a super or severe typhoon this weekend. Local governments have lowered reservoir and river water levels, inspected flood control facilities, tested emergency equipment, and suspended ferry services and water-related projects. Huang Tao is a local water resources official.
We have carried out preemptive water discharge at all key flood control sluice gates across the district, successfully lowering the river to a low water level.
Taizhou City has halted coastal passenger ferry routes, while Shensi County has evacuated more than 9,000 residents and tourists from its islands ahead of the storm. Rescue operations continue in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region after heavy downpours and severe flooding triggered by Typhoon Maisak. In Hangzhou, authorities have coordinated the distribution of relief supplies, with donations and assistance pouring in from all sectors of society. Around 1,500 displaced residents from one of the hardest hit towns have been relocated. Local health authorities are also monitoring potential secondary risks. Zheng Songwu reports.
At Hangzhou People's Hospital, medical staff have been on heightened alert since the flooding began. The hospital has secured supplies of 4 types of antivenom against cobras, banded crabs, sharp-nosed vipers, and pig vipers, covering the most common venomous snake species in the region.
Our antivenom stockpile is sufficient to meet current clinical needs. If additional supply is required, Nanning can deliver within 24 hours. The restocking takes about 3 to 4 hours.
The hospital says the entire process from a patient's arrival to antivenom administration can be completed within 30 minutes, including skin testing and observation. And that speed comes from the emergency team being ready.
We already have dedicated staff handling snakebite cases. Given the potential increase in patient volume, we have activated our emergency response plan and deployed additional personnel. All of them have received targeted training to prepare for a possible increase in snakebite cases.
Beyond the hospital's internal preparations, getting a snakebite patient from a flood-affected village to the treatment room requires broader coordination among multiple departments working together on the ground.
For routine cases, we have a green channel for snakebite patients. For those in flood-affected areas, we have an emergency plan. The Emergency Command Center coordinates with emergency services, fire rescue, blue sky rescue teams, and health authorities to transfer affected residents and then send them to designated hospitals for treatment. The process is well established. Currently, our staffing, ambulances, and overall mechanism are running smoothly with no bottlenecks.
Local authorities say they will continue to monitor the situation and maintain medical supplies, treatment capacity, and public health safeguards in affected areas.
That was Zheng Songwu in Guangxi. Thousands of students and teachers have been rescued in the city in Guangxi. They were trapped at a local education park after severe flooding triggered by record-breaking rainfall. The rescue operation, powered by some of China's most advanced emergency rescue technology, turned a flooded island back into a lifeline. Gongming has the story.
Late on July 7th, sudden floods trapped over 10,000 students and staff here, with water levels rising rapidly. Speed was of the essence. The China Annan rescue team rushed to the scene the next day, deploying a game-changing piece of technology known as the rescue aircraft carrier. This massive platform can be assembled in just over 10 minutes.
To enhance the capacity of the rescue power, so the Annan rescue team this time started to use this powered pontoon bridge. This ship actually combined with two parts and can contain 300 to 400 people at one time.
Deploying such massive equipment in a flooded campus, however, is like threading a needle. Rescuers had to navigate submerged obstacles, trees, and narrow corridors between school buildings.
We deployed 3 sets of these vessels. We did this because the terrain inside is complex and some areas are very narrow. Alternating the 3 sets allows us to stay agile, safe, and highly efficient.
For the thousands trapped inside the college, these maneuvers were the difference between hope and despair.
We were trapped for 3 days and 2 nights, surviving only on dry rations. Every night, we'd wake up either sweating or starving, no hot food at all. At first, we had some contact with the outside, but then our phones died. When we finally saw the rescuers arrive, it felt like a beacon home. Everyone started cheering and shouting.
That cheer was met with overwhelming efficiency. Leveraging the massive payload of the pontoon bridges, rescue teams pulled off a logistical miracle, evacuating 6,000 students to safety in less than 20 hours of active operations.
The rescue started again at 6 a.m. as soon as it got light. Doing this in the dark is too dangerous. We are so grateful to them. They worked so hard. Seeing them here gives us peace of mind. We will definitely overcome this challenge.
Exhausted but safe, the students disembark in an orderly line, filled with gratitude for their rescuers. What started as a sudden nightmare ends with quiet relief, a powerful reminder that when cutting-edge technology meets the human drive to save lives, no island is left stranded and no one is left behind.
That was Gongming reporting. For years, many Chinese car enthusiasts have been reluctant to modify their vehicles, not for lack of passion, but because of regulatory uncertainty. Now, as China moves to further ease restrictions on vehicle modifications, the country's automotive aftermarket is gearing up for new growth. Zhang Tao has more.
市场我觉得是在逐步往上走吧。
Long after dark, the lights are still on inside a vehicle modification workshop in Hangzhou. Across the 1,700 square meter garage, every service space is occupied. Mechanics work around the clock, raising suspensions, fitting larger tires, and installing roof racks on off-road vehicles.
Every
workstation is full. Our mechanics often work day and night. Small jobs take a day or two. Bigger builds can take nearly a week.
Workshop owner Zhong Jie has spent more than a decade in the off-road community and 4 years running his own business. But for years, enthusiasm for vehicle modification was tempered by uncertainty. Although China legalized certain vehicle modifications in 2020, many drivers remain concerned about traffic inspections, annual vehicle checks, and inconsistent enforcement across different regions.
The biggest worry is getting stopped by traffic police. Right now, many people still have to remove modified parts before annual vehicle checks, then reinstall them afterward. If approved modifications stay legal throughout the process, it'll make a huge difference.
The caution contrasts with the rapid growth of China's off-road vehicle market. The country's wrecked SUV market exceeded 220 billion yuan in 2025, more than doubling from a year ago. Annual sales have surged from fewer than 100,000 vehicles 5 years ago to nearly 900,000 today. Yet, the aftermarket has struggled to keep pace. Vehicle modification penetration remains below 5% in China, compared with around 55% in mature markets such as Europe, the United States, and Japan. To many in the industry like Zhongjian, that gap represents enormous potential.
There's also a huge market for off-road vehicle modification. People want to leave the city and explore the mountains. Places like Zhejiang have countless trails. That's where these vehicles belong.
In June, regulators introduced new measures to boost the automotive aftermarket, covering vehicle modification, RV camping, motorsports, and related services. At the heart of the policy is a nationwide framework that classifies modifications according to safety risk. Routine upgrades, including paint changes, same-size wheels, and roof racks, will qualify for simplified filing procedures and will no longer require annual inspections. Yang Ping of the China Automotive Customization Products Association says the policy could make 2026 a breakthrough year for the sector.
The new policy gives the industry an identity card and a passport.
China is home to more than 370 million vehicles, creating strong demand for customization and aftermarket services. The China Association of Automobile Manufacturers expects the vehicle modification industry to grow by around 20% annually under the new policy measures. For businesses that have spent years waiting on the sidelines, the road ahead is finally looking much clearer. For the Beijing Hour, this is Jiang Tao.
The Asia-Pacific Business Community has adopted 10 key policy documents at a major APEC meeting in Bangkok ahead of this year's APEC leaders meeting. Lucita Salkau has more.
The deals may not be signed here, but the ideas that shape them often are. The APEC Business Advisory Council, better known as ABAC, has brought together leading figures from businesses across all 21 APEC member economies. Inside this hall are people who actually move the Asia-Pacific economy. Their key message: governments and businesses must work together to keep trade open, investment flowing, and growth inclusive. Today's business environment is becoming more complex. Trade rules are shifting, supply chains are being redrawn. AI is transforming industries almost overnight. Companies are having to make long-term investment decisions in an increasingly unpredictable world. Decisions that could shape the Asia-Pacific for the years to come. While the world may be becoming more divided, for businesses, staying connected has never mattered more. Thailand, as this year's ABAC chair, says stronger regional cooperation will be critical to maintaining growth.
We have to focus on quality growth, not just growth for the sake of growing, but how do we make sense with the new technologies that we have, with the information that we have, how do we make sense and try and mitigate some of these issues that are going on in the world.
China remains a key part of that equation. As one of the region's largest trading nations and a major source of investment, Chinese businesses are looking beyond short-term headwinds, exploring new partnerships in advanced manufacturing, digital technology, green development, and cross-border trade.
We think that it exerts the union and connectivity and synergy. From our point of view, the APEC year will be very important in this China year. I think that the FATAC will be further discussed and connectivity will be further discussed. They reached the consensus as the last point. I think it shows a united of all the industrial and commercial circle of the Asia-Pacific region.
Despite growing uncertainty, business leaders say the Asia-Pacific remains resilient. Home to nearly half of global trade and 60% of the world's GDP, what happens here becomes far more than just a regional conversation. It's the next shipping route, the next supply chain, the next billion-dollar investment. It's keeping the Asia-Pacific growing, no matter how the world changes.
That was Dusita Sekha reporting from Bangkok. Now it's 29 minutes past the hour, checking the forecast before the break. Beijing will have rain at times heavy through tomorrow. The low is 24 and it's up to 30 on Saturday. Now it's time for a short break. So far this hour, Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks with his Namibian counterpart in Beijing. Rescue operations continue in flood-hit Guangxi in South China, while the country's southeastern coast braces for another strong typhoon. Tianlu with you, stay with here on the Beijing Hour.
Post Plus, a selection of the best podcasts in China, covering history, customs, music, literature, and in-depth dialogues. Find your way to a wealth of Chinese culture and thinking, all on Post Plus.
The transition to a greener future is no longer a distant goal. It's happening now. In power plants, factories, farms, and cities across China. As the world grapples with climate change, energy security, and the growing demand for electricity, China is searching for new ways to cut emissions while keeping its economy moving. Across the country, our reporters visit renewable energy hubs, industrial centers, and agricultural communities to see what that transformation looks like in practice. Through first-hand stories and on-the-ground reporting, we explore the opportunities, the challenges, and the ideas shaping China's green transition. Listen to China's Green Code, Rewriting the Rules of Growth, a special series from Climate Watch, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Hello with you on this Friday. Still to come, in business, China rolls out a carbon peak action plan for the next 5 years. In sports, Kylian Mbappe scores again to send France into the semi-final of the World Cup. In culture and entertainment, an exhibition in Brazil explores Chinese history through the universal language of food. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @cgtn radio. You're also welcome to subscribe to our Substack newsletter Beyond Beijing for the world's biggest stories, along with sharp insights and exclusive analysis. But first, checking today's headlines. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met Premier Park Tae-sung of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Park arrived in Beijing for an official visit on Friday. The premier will attend events marking the 65th anniversary of the signing of the China-DPRK Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation and Mutual Assistance. The treaty legally binds both nations to mutual defense against foreign aggression and remains in effect indefinitely unless altered by mutual consent. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has officially granted Laos the status of a dialogue partner. A memorandum signing ceremony in Beijing on Friday morning marked Laos' entry into the SCO's dialogue partner framework. The decision was agreed upon by leaders of SCO member states at last year's Tianjin summit. The organization now consists of 10 member states, 2 observer states, and 15 dialogue partners. Authorities in Zhejiang province have stepped up emergency preparations as Typhoon Bavi approaches the country's southeast coast. The National Flood and Typhoon Emergency Response has been raised to level 3, with forecasters warning Bavi could make landfall as a super or severe typhoon this weekend. Local governments have lowered reservoir and river water levels, inspected flood control facilities, tested emergency equipment, and suspended ferry services and water-related projects. Huang Tao is a local water resources official.
We
have carried out preemptive water discharge at all key flood control sluice gates across the district, successfully lowering the river to a low water level.
Taizhou City has halted coastal passenger ferry routes, while Shensi County has evacuated more than 9,000 residents and tourists from its island ahead of the storm. US President Donald Trump has sent mixed signals about ceasefire talks with Iran, which had been expected to resume following the funeral of Iran's late supreme leader. Regional mediators Pakistan and Qatar are reportedly pushing to bring both sides back to the table. American officials warn that the current escalation may persist if Iran continues attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Germany says it will purchase Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States and deploy them on its soil. Chancellor Friedrich Merz made the announcement to the lower house of parliament following the NATO summit in Ankara.
We also agreed with the U.S. government on the sidelines of the NATO meeting in Ankara that we would acquire American Tomahawk missiles and station them in Germany. This closes an important strategic gap in our defense. At the same time, we will work to develop our own European systems and station them in Europe.
The number of missiles and launchers Germany would acquire has not been disclosed. The planned purchase aligns with US President Donald Trump's push for European allies to pay for their own security. In 2024, Germany and the US agreed to temporarily deploy Tomahawk cruise missiles in Germany beginning in 2026. However, the deployment plan was scrapped after Trump announced in May that he would reduce US military presence in Germany. German media says Berlin's decision to purchase the missiles is seen as an alternative to that plan. Mexico says they will file criminal complaints over the deaths of 17 Mexican nationals linked to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. The Mexican foreign minister says 14 of the deaths occurred in ICE detention centers, while 3 happened during immigration raids. The latest victim was shot by U.S. immigration agents on Tuesday. Mexico says it has already lodged diplomatic protests, but will now seek criminal investigations. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in business, China rolls out a carbon peak action plan for the next 5 years.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
36 minutes past the hour, turning to business, here's Wang Zihang.
Thank you, Tianlu. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed lower on Friday. The Shanghai Composite was down 1%. The Shenzhen Component lost almost 2.3%. Aerospace equipment and medical services shares led the gainers. Elsewhere in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index rose over 0.6%. Japan's Nikkei increased 1.2%. China's summer grain harvest has topped 150 million metric tons for the first time. The figure represented a yearly increase of 0.7%, or 1 million metric tons. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the country's summer grain area remains basically stable, standing at around 26.5 million hectares. Over 23 million hectares of wheat were sown, down slightly from last year. The output per hectare exceeded 5,680 kilograms, an increase of 0.8%. China's State Council has issued a carbon peak action plan for the 15th five-year plan period. The plan sets a 2030 target to cut carbon intensity by 17% from 2025 levels and raise the non-fossil fuel share to 25%. Large-scale development of water, solar and biomass energy is called for through major bases. Inter-regional power transmission and direct green power connections are also promoted. The plan also calls for low-carbon transformation of coal-based chemical industries and promotes the application of green fuels such as sustainable aviation fuel and green hydrogen. It has also set a goal of building 100 national-level zero-carbon parks and 500 zero-carbon factories. Low-carbon transitions in computing infrastructure and leveraging the role of the circular economy in reducing emissions are the other main objectives. Now, for more on the carbon peaking action plan, Michael Wang spoke with Lin Bojiang, head of the China Institute for Studies in Energy Policy at Xiamen University.
China's 15th five-year plan targets 25% non-fossil energy consumption by the year 2030 and 2,800 gigawatts of wind and solar capacity by 2030 as well. Give us some context behind these numbers. How ambitious are these numbers, and how significant are these milestones for China's carbon peaking goals?
Well, it's a very ambitious, obviously, but it's workable. If you look at the non-fossil fuel and energy, right now it's roughly 21.7%. during the 14 5-year plan, we increased about 5.7%. If the current goal is to reach the 25%, that means we have to incremental during the 15 5-year plan is 3.3%. I think if you look at the speed, it's lower than the 14 5-year plan. But because of the base number is much larger, so we expect that the speed will be lower. For the carbon peak, the oil and coal need to be peak. That's for sure. Oil peak seems to be okay, workable, because the penetration rate of the electric vehicle is reached more than 60% last month. So that's okay. Wind, solar, plus energy storage, plus electric vehicle, at this moment is workable for the oil peak. But for the coal, it's more challenging because it really need to balance demand and supply in this context.
Let me stick with the 2030 action plan, because that action plan also says China will accelerate its goal of new electricity demand, so incremental electricity demand being met entirely by clean energy. What does this mean for the future build-out and upgrading of China's energy system?
Well, that is really the problem for the 15 5-year plan. We need to meet all the incremental electricity demand by the non-fossil fuel. In other words, clean energy. That is included hydro, nuclear, wind, and solar. And we all know that the wind, hydro, and nuclear, they have longer construction period. So normally it's much longer than 5 years. So let's assume that there will be some wind, nuclear and hydro come out, but it will be very small. So the major dynamic was provided by wind and solar. Now let's look at that. It was estimated that this year's electricity demand will be between 5 to 6%. Okay, if it's 5%, then let's assume that we are going to meet the entire 5% by wind and solar. The wind and solar will require 23% average incremental. And that's roughly the past 5 years average. So it's still workable.
That was Professor Lin Boqiang at Xiamen University. China's Long March 10B rocket has made history as the first Chinese launch vehicle to be successfully recovered after an orbital mission. The rocket's maiden flight made China the second country after the United States to own reliable rocket reusability technology. The Long March 10B will also provide data and validate technologies for the broader lunar program. Shanghai is gearing up to host the 2026 World Artificial Intelligence Conference and high-level meeting on global AI governance later this month. Ahead of the official opening, organizers offered a special preview into some of the core technologies that will define this year's agenda. The tour aims to highlight the industry's latest advancements and set the stage for crucial discussions on the future of artificial intelligence. Zhang Siran reports.
Marking its 8th year, the World Artificial Intelligence Conference has solidified its role as a premier global platform for artificial intelligence. This year's event will witness over 140 forums and a massive exhibition showcasing more than 3,000 cutting-edge products. The event aims to be a comprehensive ecosystem, linking global thought leaders with groundbreaking technology to forge industry consensus and offer solutions for global governance. Any advancement in AI begins with raw computing power. Shanghai Eastern Computing Technology is rethinking infrastructure design from the ground up and building a resilient foundation for the digital economy.
东方算新通过软件定义芯片技术和 3D 进存计算技术。
Our approach is built on two disruptive innovations: software-defined chips and 3D near-memory computing technology. By combining these, we create intelligent computing chips that deliver both massive computility and immense bandwidth.
AI large models are now biology engineering itself. Shanghai MatWing's technology has developed a generative AI platform to design entirely new proteins, which are the building blocks of life.
The AI model learns so many different protein properties. Therefore, it can rapidly deliver protein products according to the target you set up. It can be used in many different areas, including pharmaceutical applications, drugs, and in vitro diagnosis, and food, and agriculture, so on and so forth. And more importantly, since our AI model learns so many proteins survived in the extreme environment, those bacteria. Therefore, we can deliver protein with extreme properties like extremely temperature sensibility, acid or basic or other stability. Therefore, we can deliver protein products which was unknown, which are unavailable in the market to the public.
This is the first look at this year's event, and Shanghai is more than ready. A central focus is the mission for constructive global governance of AI. This is a determined push to align rapid innovation with ethic values, ensuring AI tools deliver responsible and sustainable benefits worldwide.
That was Zhang Siran reporting. Now, people in Rome have expressed their feelings on soaring prices and economic struggles, with many echoing growing public frustration over inflation and US tariffs.
Prices are skyrocketing. The rent, the bills, and all sorts of expenses. The US tariffs have especially caused us a lot of trouble. Wages are completely out of place. We can't eat if prices are this high.
My biggest challenge right now is to keep the repair costs down while expenses explode. But our hands are tied. And the spare part prices are soaring. Every single component is at least 30% to 40% more expensive.
Others in the Italian capital are urging the government to invest in alternative energy sources to break free from the current international order. Some European countries are already struggling with an inflation crisis, largely driven by the Middle East conflict, pushing oil prices higher. And finally, a report in the UK shows that increasing demand for goods and services to adapt to global climate change and manage climate risks offers significant market opportunities for the country. The report from the Government Office for Science says the global climate change adaptation market will reach around £3.5 trillion in the 2026 to 35 period. That's 4.7 trillion US dollars. It also says Britain could capture 4 to 10% of the total global adaptation spending on measures that directly reduce physical climate risks alongside insurance and financial services.
Thank you very much. That was Wang Zihang with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Kylian Mbappe scores again to send France into the semi-final of the World Cup.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
It's 47 minutes past the hour. Turning to sports, here's Yang Guang.
Thank you, Tianlu. We begin with the World Cup. France beats Morocco 2-0 in Boston to reach their third straight World Cup semi-final. Captain Kylian Mbappe missed the first-half penalty, but redeemed himself with a goal and assist after the hour mark. The 2018 champions dominated, limiting Morocco to just one shot on target. Morocco's best chance came from a Hakimi free kick that missed the post. Mbappe's strike was his 20th World Cup goal in as many games. The defeat ends Morocco's run 4 years after their Qatar semi-final exits. France will face either Spain or Belgium in Dallas on Tuesday. France head coach Didier Deschamps expressed the pride in reaching the semi-finals again.
Confirmation for us, and extremely proud to be here in the semi-finals for the third time in a row. Given the first half and the penalty miss, and 3 chances we had, we were not as efficient as expected, but there was no doubt in the players' heads, or Kylian Mbappe's head, after the penalty miss.
Those 20 World Cup goals Mbappe has scored have come at just 27 years old. It all started 8 years ago in Russia when a teenager took the world by storm and guided his nation to the title. For more game analysis, here's Tianyu in the studio. So despite Mbappe's early penalty miss, France still controlled the game. Tianyu, how did they manage to stay composed and dominate Morocco, especially in the second half?
Well, I think what impressed me the most was France's mentality. Missing an early penalty could easily have changed the momentum, but they never really looked rattled. But instead, they stayed patient, kept circulating the ball, and trusted that chances would eventually come.
And on the other side, Morocco really missed Ismail Sabari. I think it's the player who usually connects midfield with the attack, and without him, they struggled to keep the ball in advanced areas. And that meant France could dominate possession, with Kone and Rabiot controlling the midfield, while Upamecano and Saliba comfortably dealt with anything in the air. And once Mbappe scored early in the second half, Morocco had to push forward, and that played perfectly into France's hands because it created more space for Mbappe and Dembele to attack.
Right, now France will next take on the winner between Spain and Belgium. Which opponent do you think poses a greater threat to France's chances and why?
For me, I think it's Spain. Belgium have scored plenty of goals and they have looked dangerous in attack, but Spain probably have the better balance across the pitch. I think their biggest strength is the ability to control possession and dictate the tempo. And that's exactly what you need against France. If you allow France to play in transition, with Mbappe and Dembele running into space, they're almost impossible to stop. And Spain have the technical quality in midfield to limit those situations. They've been a little inconsistent during this World Cup, but when they're at their best, I think they're the one team that can really make France uncomfortable.
Right, that was Tian Yu in the studio for the World Cup game analysis. Spain is gearing up for the quarter-final against Belgium in LA. The European champions are seeking to maintain their unbeaten streak in the tournament. Lamine Yamal took part in the session and is expected to spearhead Spain's attack after helping his side beat Portugal 1-0 in the round of 16. Wingers Nico Williams and Jeremy Pino have also overcome injury concerns that disrupted Spain's group stage campaign, giving Luis de la Fuente a full-strength team. Now, in men's singles tennis action, Novak Djokovic will face defending champion Jannik Sinner for spot in the Wimbledon final. The world number one stands in the way of Djokovic's bid for an 8th title at All England club. The Serbian veteran continues to defy his age, adding to his legendary career with yet another deep run at the Grand Slam.
Yes, at this stage that I'm still able to battle these young guys that have 15 years less than me, and that I'm able to beat them at the tightest possible scoreline. So of course, in a sense, it is really a nice surprise. But at the same time, I always have the highest expectations for myself, and I can be very self-critical, very hard on myself. But at the same time, I try to also enjoy the moments like this.
The winner will advance to the final on Sunday. Also in tennis, Czech tennis is shining at Wimbledon. Karolina Muchova saved a match point to defeat Coco Gauff in a 3-setter, reaching her second Grand Slam final. The world number 9 is now the 4th Czech woman in the Open era to reach semi-finals at all 4 slams. Gauff, a 2-time major winner, squandered her match points, while Muchova also missed her first chance before finally winning the tiebreak 12-10. Muchova will face compatriot Linda Noskova in the final 4 years after losing the 2023 French Open final.
Honestly, it was such a big fight. It was a roller coaster. You're up and down. In 10 seconds, you have a match point, then your match point down. It's no time to think, but very nerve-wracking. I don't know, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm really kind of shaking and trying to sink it in, but the atmosphere here, undescribable. Thank you everyone who came and supported us.
Noskova reached her first Grand Slam final with a straight set win over Marta Kostyuk.
Thank you very much. And that was Yang Guang with sports. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in culture and entertainment. An exhibition in Brazil explores Chinese history through the universal language of food.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
Now it's 53 minutes past the hour, turning to culture and entertainment. An exhibition in Rio de Janeiro is offering visitors a rare glimpse into Chinese history through one of humanity's most universal experiences, eating. Featuring artifacts from the National Museum of China, the exhibition explores how food, ritual, and culture have shaped one of the world's oldest civilizations. Lucretia Franco reports.
A major cultural event at Rio de Janeiro's National Historic Museum. China's Consul General in Rio and the director of the National Museum of China are hosting the exhibit Flavors of Tradition, the history of food in ancient China. a rare opportunity for Brazilians to gain insight into thousands of years of Chinese culinary history. More than 120 individual pieces are on display, showing how food preparation and table presentation were as much about communicating identity as they were about eating. The curators traveled from China to Rio as the collection made its first ever crossing of the Atlantic from Budapest, Hungary.
The Chinese people regard food as paramount and take eating very seriously. At the same time, in traditional Chinese culture, eating is not simply about eating. It has been elevated to the level of ritual.
Objects dating back as far as 10,000 years are on display. Some were used by everyday households, others were reserved for royal banquets and ceremonial occasions. The exhibit also traces centuries of commerce, from goods traveling along the Silk Road to tea reaching Brazil more than 200 years ago, a connection captured in the 19th century print depicting Chinese tea growers in Rio de Janeiro.
It's interesting to imagine tea as part of an earlier chapter in the relationship between Brazil and China. Some of the exhibit's finest pieces are linked to tea, from its preparation and storage to its service, reflecting the importance of tea in Chinese culture.
2026 has been designated as a cross-cultural year between Brazil and China. And this is part of an ongoing effort to raise awareness about China's history. At the same time, a sampling of Brazilian art is on display at the National Museum of China in Beijing. Running through October, curators say the display shows how learning about vessels, cups, and other objects linked to food and food rituals can help strengthen cultural understanding.
That was Lucretia Franco reporting. More than 200 young Chinese Americans are on a cultural discovery tour in Sichuan province. They visited panda habitats at Dujiangyan Panda Valley. They also explored the 2,000-year-old Dujiangyan irrigation system still in use today, calling it an amazing example of ancient wisdom. At the Sichuan Cuisine Museum, they cooked kung pao chicken and panda-shaped dumplings. The group leader says the trip helps children connect history and geography with real-life experiences beyond textbooks. New research on a bronze artifact from the Sanxingdui ruins in southwest China reveals deep connections between the ancient Shu civilization and other regional cultures. The bronze kneeling figurine with a zun vessel was made from materials sourced across China. The vessel likely came from the Central Plains, while the figurine was locally cast in Sanxingdui. Researchers say different artisans crafted the components separately before assembling them, blending diverse cultural influences. The findings challenge earlier assumptions that these artifacts were purely mythical, showing instead they reflect real sacrificial rituals and the unity in the diversity of Chinese civilization. Now it's 57 minutes past the hour. Checking the forecast for the day. Beijing will have rain, at times heavy, through tomorrow. The low is 24 and it's up to 30 on Saturday. Shanghai will be overcast tonight, light rain tomorrow with a low of 27 and a high of 32. Chongqing will be clear tonight, overcast tomorrow with a low of 29 and a high of 38 degrees Celsius. That's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour. Making news today. Chinese President Xi Jinping holds talks with his Namibian counterpart in Beijing. On behalf of the staff, this is Tianlu in the Chinese capital. Hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
The best military commander is not he who fights 100 battles and wins every one of them. The best military strategy does not lead to the desiccation of the enemy's capital city. Decoding the Art of War will help you understand why there's no art in war and how Sun Tzu stayed undefeatable using the science of war, with fun stories and insightful breakdown of famous battles. Find Decoding the Art of War wherever you listen.
A poem for the Tibetan antelope, the gentle spirit of the Qinghai Seazon Plateau, spoken by voices from across the world. Every spring, Female antelopes migrate hundreds of miles to Zhuonai Lake to give birth, as we build gentle passages for their journey.
Hello, little Tibetan antelope. Eyes opening to the light for the very first time.
To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower.
So much wonder calls for so much courage. But have no fear. The way home is right there, waiting for you.
From the snows of Kunlun to the winds of Tangula, the wilderness will teach me to be strong.
But the call of life itself never ceases.
A train runs toward the horizon. A road stretches through the wilderness.
The bridge that soars through the clouds is no barrier across the land, but a gateway to where I truly belong.
Tibetan antelope's hoofprints loosen the soil, letting snow melt sink into the earth.
Human presence passes through,
but we've never walked this land alone.